Hello, my name is Joe Aldridge, and I've been a type 1 diabetic for 7 decades.
And I'm Cam. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and you are tuned in to the Diabetes Our Way podcast, where we discuss all things diabetes related.
This podcast, we're going to share a few laughs, and you're also going to learn a lot as far as what we've experienced over our trials with type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
But please note, we are not doctors, and this podcast is for general information and entertainment. It is not any form of direct medical advice. If you or someone in your life has or may have any form of diabetes, please contact a medical professional. Hey guys, welcome to Diabetes Our Way with Joe. He's Joe.
I'm Joe.
Cam. I'm Cam. So thank you guys very much for the support from the first episode. Got some good feedback. And like I say, good feedback is good no matter what.
Or any feedback's good,
or
right?
Any feedback, right? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I guess the one thing I'd say, Cam, we'll try to keep this a little shorter. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll keep it a little shorter this time around. But be prepared. We have some good facts to present for you today. Today, what we're going to do is go over an overview of some statistics globally, and then I'll break some down from the United States, specifically with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetic, and also the when you get diabetes when you're pregnant too. So it's very interesting information. And so what I did was I went on the International Federation of Diabetes, or International Diabetes Federation. Sounds like a wrestling promotion there. But
yeah. It is a wrestling. You wrestle with it every day.
Exactly. Good point. But they just put out their atlas, their diabetes atlas, 11th edition of 2025. And you can get all this information on their website as well. I'm just presenting a few more facts, some key points that I think are helpful to point out. But it's a 130-page atlas, so chock full of information that really deep dives. So there's a lot of great stuff on there. So I'll first start out with, since this is a podcast about diabetes, type 1, type 2, it's interesting to know how many people around the world have diabetes. You want to guess, Joe? Globally?
I'm thinking it's about 800 billion.
Not quite that high. It is actually, in 2024, they say that there's 588.7 million people who have some form of diabetes. And they're projecting that in 2050 is going to be 852.5 million people who have diabetes. That's a 45% increase.
So wait a minute now. So you said 2025, it's going to be almost what I said, right?
No, 2050.
2050. It's going to get there quicker than that.
It might. Yes, it might. It might. You'll be surprised. North America, currently right now, we have 56.2 million people who have diabetes, and they project that number to go up in 2050 to 68.1 million. So a 21% increase.
So why do you think that is?
I think, well, they have it based on a couple different aspects, whether you're low income, high income, poverty level. Do you live in a rural? Do you live in a city? Interesting enough, looking at the data, there was a lot, as you can imagine, rural numbers were lower than if you lived in the city, right? High income and middle income reached higher than your low income. I would say that's probably because of goods and resources available to some of these people in the countries. For instance, there's a whole other breakdown. The highest one was, they calculated as Africa, right? Where in 2024, 24.6 million people have diabetes, and in 2050, they're projecting that to go up to 59.5 million. So that's a 142% increase.
Wow. That's great points because what's the starvation rate in Africa and what's the other disease rates? We ought to look that up.
Yeah, I was interested to know that in this study, which is something I didn't want to see, that type 2 diabetes actually can lead to dementia. I don't know if you've heard that before, but we'll dive more into that a little bit later into this. But
Yeah.
I found that. And how did they do that? How did they classify? How did they get this data? So they looked at the data where they did a couple different methods. So whether it's an oral glucose tolerance test, fasting glucose levels, the hemoglobin, your A1C,
Right.
self-reported diabetes, and of course medical records or clinical diagnosis. So and their sample size was equal to or greater to 5,000 people, mostly, from 1,500 to 5,700 to 1,499, and then less than 700 people. And they have a bunch of different representatives from nationally, regionally, locally, ethnic groups as well. Age was, they broke it down to more so the people 20 to 79, and then they broke it down a little bit further into your 65s and older. um but
Can I ask a
yeah,
question on that?
yeah.
So, does it say how many of that total are actually type 1 and how many are type 2?
So interesting enough, it doesn't break it down into that type of calculation. They have it broken down to diabetes, then who's pre-diabetic, and then who is the if you have pregnant diabetes when you're pregnant. So those were the three different categories. I wish they would have broken it down to type 1 versus type 2, because that would have been really interesting to read and see.
Well, if anybody knows the answer to that is, please email us. But I will tell you, about 90% of the diabetics are type 2 from the
Exactly.
last studies. I mean, it's type 1 diabetics. And here's the misnomer. Everybody, they lump diabetes into one category. The way type 1 diabetes is treated versus the way type 2 diabetes is treated is two totally separate ways of treatment of diabetes. And it's getting lost in all of this. And that's my thoughts, that's my feelings, but that's what I'm seeing
Do you
is
feel
that,
that way because the some type 2 diabetes eventually have to go on to insulin, and that's why they
no,
lump it?
no, I feel that way because if you look, and I've drawn up data and stuff like that too, type 2 diabetes was not that big of an issue back in the 70s and 80s. And it all started to transgress when people, if you look at it, I grew up in a rural town. You grew up in a rural town in South Carolina. And when I grew up, there was no fast food restaurants. We ate a lot of farm to table meals. Now, that's very tough if you live in a big city, especially now. I mean, it's easier and it's cheaper to go, maybe not now, but what's cheaper to go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac, French fries, and that for like $3, $4. But we didn't have a McDonald's. I mean, the first McDonald's came out was like in the 70s and 80s, and that was in Evansville, Indiana. I can
Mm-hmm.
still remember that. I mean, we'd drive there, but we had no fast food restaurants in this small town that I grew up with. And so our food was pretty much made by my mom, your grandma, and it was there were no preservatives in it. There was none of this stuff that basically helped you to get fatter quicker.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not to mention today you've got the DoorDash and the Uber Eats, so you don't even have to leave your home to get fast food anymore.
That's right. Well, you can even get your alcohol delivered, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. Not, I don't think you can in South Carolina. Well, You could probably get beer, but not, liquor.
Well, that's all the result of COVID. But my point is that I think that, and I'll say this, we'll look, we can dive more into it. But isn't it interesting now? If you look in America, you can advertise medicine on television.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that in other countries. You can't do that
Interesting.
in Australia. You can't do that in Europe.
So when
There's
you
no,
you you visited Australia recently, did you see
yeah,
any
no,
prescription commercials?
no, no. There's no, and when um, my son's fiance, when she comes to America, she's just blown away that you can actually advertise medicines on television here. And why was that? That's another topic. We'll talk about it. It happened back in 1992 when all
Okay.
of a sudden money wasn't put into research, it was put into lobbyists.
Interesting. Good way to leave us hanging, Joe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
um,
yeah. And the big pharma developed in 1992. Hopefully, big pharma's not listening.
well, we're still doing our show, so
But
what's
those are great facts, Cam. From I would love to see if we can dive a little deeper to see exactly in these foreign countries how and in America, what's the percentages of type 1, type 2 um, pregnancy with this and compare that to other countries.
yeah, absolutely. I
I
mean,
mean, we could do a
in
little bit
this
more.
yeah, in this report it breaks down the different countries, but it doesn't break it down specifically to type 1 versus type 2.
Right.
But you'll find this interesting because I found it interesting. It's an estimated 252 million adults living with diabetes are unaware that they have the condition.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of blown
And
away
those,
by that.
what was that percentage?
252 million adults are unaware that they have diabetes.
So go back to your beginning. You were
Where,
pre-diabetic. You were
yeah,
pre-diabetic, and your blood sugars were running higher. And then as you kept gaining more weight, or if the type 2 diabetics gains more weight, they get used to feeling, they don't know their blood sugars are 300, 400. They just get used to that. And guess what they happen? They go to the bathroom more, but they keep eating because they're hungry and they get
right.
fatter and fatter. And this is the truth of the matter. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but they don't know. And most of them won't go to the doctor to get treated or to get looked after, but they are just get used to living with a high blood sugar. And then guess what happens then? Going back to my point about your blood sugar keeping it under 150. Well, all of
You
a
start
sudden,
suffering cardiovascular diseases like
yeah, you
stroke,
start
heart
losing
attack.
it. You lose a toe or you lose a leg.
Mm-hmm.
That's the interesting thing about type 2 diabetes. They tend to lose limbs more often than what type 1 do.
And it's interesting because you're right. They are unaware, they're so used to it that they just, like you said, just keep eating. For me, I always knew it was always told to me by my dad was if you have to go to the bathroom a lot, that was an early sign that you might be diabetic. So
Right.
I always held true to that. It's like, man, I'm going to the bathroom more often than what I should be going. Maybe I have it. Maybe I should get checked for it. So I'm not sure if it's the people they have pre-diabetes or they just say, hey, it's a part of my normal lifestyle and this is they don't ever get it checked out. But I don't understand why you wouldn't want to get it checked out. It'd be interesting to find out why people don't want to get checked for diabetes.
Yeah, I'd love to, hear some comments and stuff like that to it. Now, I will tell you though, when you get to my age, you get in your sixth, seventh decade, the more you go to the bathroom and the harder it becomes, you might want to get your prostate checked. So we can talk
Right.
about the prostate checks.
Exactly. They said it's an estimated 635 million adults aged 20 to 79 years are living with impaired glucose tolerance. So that's 12%.
Yeah, interesting.
Guess how much
So
money was spent, a global health expenditure in 2024 for diabetes?
hang on. I think I got that answer. Hang on. My biggest problem is I can't see it.
But you spend it.
Yeah. So in 2024, just had that figure. Hang on here for a minute, Cam.
Joe has his own notes, and I've got my own notes. So we
All
figure
right,
we give
and
you guys
then
some good research data today.
that's a great thing about the internet. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
back when I was started and everything else, you never had this stuff.
No.
And so let's see.
Well, you want me to just to tell you, Joe?
Yeah, because I'm actually thinking it was close to almost a $500 billion.
It was 1 trillion.
Yeah,
One
and that's
trillion
worldwide
dollars.
though. That's
Yeah,
that's not that's worldwide.
that's
Yeah,
worldwide. I have the number for the United States.
yeah, that's like $500 billion, isn't it?
United States was $404.5 billion.
So almost $500 billion.
Yes, exactly. China came in second with 168.9 billion on health expenditures.
See, that blows me away. I know the population's much larger in China and stuff like that, but I guess when you compare that to Japan and everything else, I guess China's got oh, I'm just shocked that the number's that high in China.
Well, I think it has to depend too on the type of healthcare coverage that people have. Obviously, they didn't have Canada on here. I didn't have much data on Canada, and Canada's. I would have loved to seen that with the universal healthcare. Um, but
Or Australia.
yeah, I think.
Australia or England is a good one to compare. I actually think if there's ever going to be a cure, it'll come out of England.
Well, United Kingdom was number 6 with $23.6 billion spent on health expenditures. So you got United States number 1, China number 2, then Brazil, Germany, Japan, United Kingdom, France, Mexico, Argentina, and Italy. I don't see Australia on these data points, but
I think they're pretty low because if you look at the life expectancy, Australia's got one of the highest ones. Other than if
mhm,
you die of skin cancer down there, it's because of the way the sun is and everything else close to the southern border or southern pole and stuff
right.
like that. But that doesn't sound too good, Cam. I mean, you're American and you're part German, so where's Italy fit into that too?
Well, I'm shocked because, well, I'm shocked and I'm not shocked because we talked about before how you can go to other countries and eat almost the similar same things over in Italy or France, but you eat the same stuff here in the United States and you gain all this weight. But you could be eating the same thing in Australia, Italy, and not really gain that much money. Or much money, but much weight.
Goes back to 1992 and the preservatives,
Right.
big pharma, and the big crops.
And I think people really need to take it seriously. Like I told you on our first podcast, I didn't take it as serious because I was young, naive, and thought I was like, I'm not going to get it. But 3.4 million
Well,
people.
that's you got the invincible theory. I mean, I can't say what I do for a living and everything else, but everybody thinks they're um,
invincible.
Superman or
Yeah,
Superwoman, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get disabled. I'm not going to, it's going to happen to the other guy or girl. It's not going to happen to me. And,
right.
yeah, but like I like to say, God has a plan for everybody. And you just don't know is when your number's up or when the time happens.
Hmm. Well, 3.4 million people died as a result of diabetes in 2024 globally.
Yeah. And see, and I'd love to know. Here's another thing that we can talk about too, as far as the treatments and stuff like that. I was looking up like, um, the percentage of people that go to the ER based upon insulin pump malfunctions,
That's interesting. That'd
and
be an
that,
interesting topic.
oh yeah, it's you were talking about your Libre and stuff like that about not reading right. Well, guess
Happened
what?
today.
If the insulin pump doesn't read right and it reads you're too high, but you're actually too low, you got to act pretty quick, especially if your blood sugar is dropping because your insulin pump's giving you more insulin and because it's thinking you're high, you don't have a lot of time to react. And that's where all of a sudden you show up the ER going, what the hell's going on? Well, if you go too low, it can result in death.
Well, it happened to me today. I was at the
So
gym.
tell us about that.
I was at the gym. I've been eating really great, working out, watching. I've gotten so much to. I weigh everything and I put tape on my containers so I can calculate it on how many grams of protein, everything like that. But I was in the gym, minding my own business. I was pumping out a really good bicep workout, and all of a sudden, my dad texts me and said, because we can see each other's stuff, and he's like, "You're 62 right now." And so I looked at my app, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I am. I'm actually going down lower." But here's the thing, I felt fine. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't confused. I felt so fine. And so I said, well, maybe this is reading malfunctioning because the other day I had the same thing and I took my glucose, my blood, and said it was 54, but I was really 88. So I chalked it up to maybe it's not reading correctly. And sure enough, I kept going through my workout, and sure enough, my blood sugar levels started reading accurately to like 70, then 80. And I said, but the type of mental kind of exhaustion I felt
Yeah,
thinking that
drama.
while I was going through this workout, granted I was like in a public gym, so if anything happens to me, there's a bunch of people who are around me who can save me. But
Well,
it messed with my head.
hang on that comment though. How you know they can save you? They know you're diabetic.
They don't. I don't have anything showing that I'm a
So
diabetic.
what do they know? You might be having a heart attack. And so instead of giving you a short sugar, they're giving you, mouth to mouth and everything else. So yeah, I mean, people, it's interesting. They might also thought maybe you just, were drunk. You came in and stuff like that. So they don't know whether to give you sugar or not.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
so
you talk to
what should we get?
paramedics. Yeah, well, you can get something that you can wear on your neck that says you're a diabetic. Those medical alerts and stuff like that for especially for older people, but you can also get that for, for being diabetic too. Also too, tell the gym, is there a person there at the gym that like when I go to work out, I got a personal trainer. Everybody that works at the gym knows I'm a type 1 diabetic. And I've told them if I start getting low, here's what's going to happen. And they know that I've got sugar tablets, I got quick acting sugar, liquid kind in my gym bag that they go run and get to. And it happened the other day. My trainer, she said, "Hey, you feeling okay?" And I'm like, I don't know. She goes, "Check your sugar." And yeah, I was like at 62. And so I went and took a couple glucose tablets.
Wow.
And so you need to let people know and don't be ashamed. I mean, I'm going to tell you, growing up as a type 1 diabetic back in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of parents who wouldn't let their kids, they wanted them to stay away from me because they actually back then, it's kind of like Ryan White. Remember Ryan White from Indianapolis, who was he got AIDS, and all of a sudden parents wouldn't let their children play with him, even though he was so young. He was, I don't know what, 9, 10, 11 years old. And really, you feel for that kid that, all of a sudden people are saying, hey, we don't want you to play with our child because you might end up giving them AIDS. Well, guess what? I had kids back then I couldn't play with because their parents thought that I'd give them type 1 diabetes.
Wow. That's interesting because it's not, it doesn't work like that. I guess that's
No, but hey, back then, yeah, back then though, nobody knew about it. There was no internet. There was nothing this and that and the other. They just thought, well, hey, that Joe Aldrich kid's a type 1 diabetic, and I'm sure it probably happened to my sister Cindy and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, and then all of a sudden, if I showed up to a birthday party, I couldn't eat the birthday cake.
Right.
And everybody's looking at you like, who's that weird kid? He can't even eat cake. And, the worst holiday. Well, I was going to tell you, you know what the worst holiday for a type 1 diabetic is?
Your birthday?
No, Halloween.
Oh, yeah, Halloween.
Yeah, I was like Charlie Brown. I got rocks. I got apples. Everybody in the neighborhood knew who Joe Aldrich was. So, I didn't get rocks, but I got apples.
Yeah.
I got toothbrushes. I got all that great stuff, but I just think of Charlie Brown. He comes home, he goes, hey, you're my friend and everything else, and you get a candy bar, you get those caramel apples and stuff like that, and I come home and, well, what'd you get? I got a toothbrush. That was it. I hate it. To this day, I still hate Halloween.
It's not funny, but you can laugh about it now. So how did you feel when the kids were avoiding you?
I didn't care. You just you got to develop thick skin, and life is not easy. And going back to the first podcast, my mom wasn't going to let me be a victim, and so maybe I didn't get the treats, but I did play a lot of tricks.
There is.
And I've gone to confession to a few of them.
There you go. There is one fact. They did put in one caveat that an estimated 9.1 million people are living with type 1 diabetes. The majority, 69%, are aged 20 to 59.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many, what the average age of type 1 diabetes is when you're diagnosed.
Yeah.
Because
would you say that
we won't mention it? We won't mention the names right now. But Cameron's two cousins, my nephew and my niece, they got type 1 diabetes when they were in there between 15 and 20 years of age, and and so that to me is an interesting stat. I think something happens in those teenage years or even earlier where it just screws up your pancreas.
Yeah. Well, 90%, I think it was 90% of the study was mostly type 2 diabetes. You're right. So type 2 does control the majority of it. And they say with people with type 2, which I'm not sure if is that a car horn? Someone doesn't.
No, we got construction going on in our house. That's actually it's a cam sensor going off. He's going low on us.
No, they said people with type 2 diabetes are at a higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, including a 72% higher risk of heart attack, 52% higher risk of stroke, and an 84% risk of heart failure.
Yeah.
And
You know
56 are risk of having dementia who have diabetes.
yeah. Yeah, part of that is that sometimes too much insulin is the problem. And it goes back to my point. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to get him on the podcast. But sometimes taking too much insulin is can cause the coating in the arteries. But if your blood sugar's high, being above 150, this is what I've been told. I mean, you can check with your doctors and everything else. That helps, coat the arteries too. So especially with type 2 diabetics, if they can't bring that blood sugar down lower, that coating of the arteries, that plaque inside the arteries and everything else, that shrinks the blood vessels, and then that's where all of a sudden a loss of limb, a stroke, heart attack, and especially in the brain and stuff like that. I think where that dementia can come in.
Yeah.
It's there's I don't know. Did you take science when you were in high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Ivy was my biology teacher. I like that guy. He was a great teacher.
Yeah, but I mean, you remember like you would do the science tests and stuff like that and pour stuff in and all of a sudden it catch on fire, do this and that and the other. Well, there's a cause and an effect to everything. So everything you eat, it causes an effect on something. Everything you inject into your body, every prescription drug you take and everything else, there's an effect to it. And going back to my point about being your own best doctor, try to figure out if I'm eating this like you're doing and everything else, you're trying to figure out, I'm eating this much here, I'm this and that and the other. What's that effect on my diabetic control? And I think, Cam, how long have you had type 2 diabetes now?
I'd probably say about 4 years now.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
So it goes back to my point. I think if you stay on this track, your body will adjust to what's happening over time. And if you stay at the same weight, this and that and the other, and, then it will figure it out. But you're working out, you're doing the things to lose the weight, and that's a hard. You really got to stay on top of it in order to adjust what you have to do. Because a lot of times when your dad was saying about sugar's going too low, it's because you're doing all the right things. And maybe you're over medicating with stuff. And that's the key thing. Same thing with me. I mean, I got to watch what I eat. And the great thing about my Libre is I'm checking it and everything else. And I'm like, okay, but I'm going to go work out. What happens there?
It's something not until today that's great that you mentioned about having something. I don't always like to carry a gym bag with me, but maybe I will start doing that just in case that ever happens. But I'm getting so used to the sensors being low or not accurate that sometimes I just don't want to pay the price and think it's a sensor. That's why I always take my finger prick. But it's interesting you talked about the treatment options. So I could tell you, well, first I want to hear about your treatment options back in the day, and then I'll talk about what my treatment options have been and how you regulated.
When you say back in the day, are you talking back in the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, compared to what you're doing now.
Oh, it was like I said. I mean, I was fortunate that my mother and my dad and my family, including my brother, your dad, and my 3 sisters, they all kind of knew and stuff like that. And so it was we were very disciplined on what Cindy and I, my sister who's a type 1 diabetic, what we could eat. But I thank God that was because of my mom and my diabetic doctor. And Stanley Bryan in Evansville, Indiana, he was Cindy's doctor. He was my doctor. But it was, you know, they basically kept us on a very strong regimen. And then, when all of a sudden I would start to go low, I'd really start sweating like a pig and stuff like that. Even though, and the insulin was made from pork insulin. It was pork insulin, so it was made from pigs. So accordingly, when you go low, I guess you sweat like a pig. But anyhow,
Is that where the expression comes from?
yeah, well, for me it was, and that's my own expression. But but back then I loved it when I went low because I could eat a candy bar. I mean, I remember fishing with my brother, your dad, and and Grandpa up at Deer Creek, and we were right down below, and I'm sitting there on Deer Creek fishing, and I'm sweating and everything else, and your dad recognizes that I'm having a low blood sugar, and he goes up and he says, "What do you want me to get you?" I said, "Give me a Coke or give me something." And it was kind of a funny story. He ends up getting me a Diet Coke and stuff like that. And back then, that was Diet Coke was okay. It was made of saccharin. Or he got me a Tab. It was Tab or a Fresca because he's thinking, well, he's diabetic, but he just thought I was sweating because it was hot out and stuff like that. And I was having a pretty good reaction and stuff. And but yeah, that was I always chuckle because I said, well, the great thing about if I have a reaction, I could drink a Coke. I could eat a Snickers candy bar. I could eat a Milky Way. I could eat these things and stuff like that. So I didn't mind it that bad, but I could tell, when my sugars were high, I was, I just wasn't feeling right. I was going to the bathroom more, this and that and the other, and it was all by feel. And I was looking at like when the glucometer and stuff like that came out, and I think it was in the let me look here. And sorry, I'm wearing headphones, so I have a hard time adjusting these eyes because I got bifocals in. But I think it was in the 1980s when that first finger prick thing came out. And because prior to that, we peed in a cup. And then that's what your sugars were like 3 to 4 hours prior to what it was when you were peeing in the cup. Because it took that long to go through with the the fats, the glucose, and everything else coming through your system.
Right.
So, it was got better as time goes on. Now, I still feel like the Libre, and I'm on the 14th day Libre. I really feel like it's very accurate, and I'm very fortunate that my endocrinologist and everything else, we've got an idea of, okay, if I eat, 18 carbs, or let's say it's one for every 8 to 9, I'm going to take 2 units of quick acting insulin. And so, it's back when we had like blended insulin and stuff like that. Now we have quick acting and long acting insulin that I can actually inject right into my arm. So if I test my blood sugar and it's, 200, and I'm not going to eat anything, well, I might want to take 1 unit to get it down below 150. But then my biggest problem a lot of times is that sometimes I overreact. Like, 20 minutes later, I'm checking my blood sugar and it's still at 190. Well, I'm going to take another one. And then all of a sudden I don't know if you've ever gotten into this yo-yo effect, but that's where my doctor says, no, Joe, you got to let that insulin, because it might not react as quickly as what you think it is, because I think it's supposed to react within 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes a little longer.
Right.
And stuff like that. So, yeah, sometimes you go into this, you're up high, then you're down low. You're up high, then you eat more food, you go back high. And you're, just constantly jumping on a trampoline versus trying to go up high, get it down, and then stay level.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So it's the technology today is really amazing. You got Dexcoms, you got these things, and yeah, they've got issues and stuff like that. But it's everything's got issues. You just need to figure out, how to handle those issues.
So you have the Libra 2, right?
I have the 14-day Libre,
Okay. The one that
which
you
I think
still
is the
have to
Libre too.
the one that you still have to scan yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah, right here, and then I've got it on my phone. I just scan it, and you know, I was
So
doing
I
that
have
today, and my average blood.
I have the Libra
Yeah,
3.
yeah,
I don't have to scan it. It
yeah,
tells me automatically, which is
yeah.
nice because sometimes it's a pain in the ass to check it. So you should
Yeah.
look at getting the 3 because that way you don't have to reach
But if you're
around.
having issues, I don't have any issues with the
I know.
14 day,
I know.
and I don't mind. I don't mind checking it.
So don't listen to me.
Yeah, no, no. Well, you're type 2. I'm type 1.
Right. Um so with mine, I told you that I was on metformin, I was on Jardiance, I was on glipizide and Trulicity. So I was on all of those. When I got really serious about working out, going to the gym, I was still taking those, but then slowly I started to see my levels become normal, in the normal range. So my doctor told me, go ahead and get off of glipizide first, right? So I slowly weaned myself off of glipizide. Kept going. I weaned myself off of Jardiance. Kept going. I've weaned myself off of metformin. So the only thing I take right now is my one shot a week of Trulicity. I even tested it without
God,
taking a shot of Trulicity just to see how my blood sugars were. Granted, there were certain things that I ate or what I would normally eat that would raise it up a little bit more. But for the most part, the only thing I am taking right now is Trulicity. And a lot of people are shocked when I tell them that oh, you're not taking your metformin or Jardiance or glipizide. No, I'm not. I'm only taking my Trulicity, and that's because I'm being careful about what I'm eating. I'm watching my carb intake. I'm watching what type of foods I put in my mouth. So yes, it's basic, but I'll eat chicken. I'll eat rice. I'll eat lean meats. I'll eat fruits and
yeah,
vegetables. If I have
yeah,
to have something sweet, I'll normally go for a fruit, but there's sometimes if I do get too low, I'll go for one of these vanilla wafers, right? But I'll measure it out, like how much I need to have. Or I'll have one of those BOGOs or Bombos, the peanut butter and jelly that are mixed like with oat, but they're gluten free, soy, all kind of more natural, like a vegan op. Really good, by the way. I don't like getting low because I feel like I don't want to eat something that's going to screw with all the progress that I'm making, right?
yeah,
But at the end of the day, I do have to think if I'm getting so low, what's more important to eat something that I haven't been eating that's unhealthy to get my sugar levels up or go into a diabetic coma. So,
yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is good, and you're figuring it out, and that's the key thing. And so, I think you just got to keep, doing what you're doing from that standpoint. And I know we're kind of getting up close to the, our time limit and everything else to kind of keep this here. But here's the one thing I will tell you. Um, when I was growing up, we had to weigh out our food. And so, I ate a lot of eggs, ate a lot of meat, ate butter, pure milk, like even half and half, and we could talk all about the heart thing and stuff like that. But slab of butter and maybe one piece of toast. But greens are good for diabetics. Green vegetables are good, all except peas, because peas are a starch.
right, you
So
tell them to say
look at that. All right. But here's the other thing about one fruit I still won't eat to this day.
bananas
That's right. You know why? You get
because the
about that
spikes.
much. You get about that much. You can eat 15 grapes, green grapes, versus that little of a banana. You can eat one whole orange versus that much of a banana.
So what is
And you
it?
can
How
get,
much is a banana spike versus
oh, it's
orange?
all sugar. It's all sugar. And so, you can get the same things in banana through supplements as just eating a banana. Now, some nutritionists are going to say, yeah, but it's better for you. But I would rather eat grapes. I'd rather eat blueberries than eating that much banana. Here's the other thing I will tell you: as you age, you're going to have stuff happening with your stomach, maybe diverticulitis and stuff like that. Diabetics get that. And so I've got to be careful on what berries I eat and what seeds I eat. So I don't eat blackberries. I don't eat strawberries. I don't eat raspberries. I used to love raspberries. When I was a teenager and everything else, my best friend, his mom and dad grew raspberries, and we'd sit out there and eat raspberries just right off the vine. I don't eat peanuts. I don't eat nuts. The only nuts I will eat is cashews because they're soft, because they get stuck down in there. I don't eat popcorn anymore. And I used to coach baseball a lot. I used to love to eat popcorn. So you got to watch what happens that you're putting in, even with all this other stuff, because, diabetes can affect not just your heart, your kidneys, and everything else, but it can affect your digestive system.
I
So
would argue
that's,
to say they say that high blood pressure is a silent killer. I would also say that diabetes is a silent killer too because it's
oh
affecting
yeah,
all the other areas of your body.
right. That's absolutely right. But there are things that I've learned over the years, and back when I used to eat popcorn and stuff like that, I had 2, 3, 4 days stays in the hospital with unbelievable pain in my digestive system. And you couldn't go to the bathroom. You had bowel blockages and stuff like that. And so finally, uh, good friend, and doctors said, "Hey, you just need to stop eating these things." And I've done that, and it's really hard, especially when you have a spouse that loves popcorn and stuff like that.
Well, like I said, like you said too, you just got to test what's right for your body and try out different things. I haven't had any bread, and God knows, and I love bread. I
Well,
love
I
to
know you
bake
used
bread.
to. He'd post on Facebook as all these bread loaves he was making.
and
His grandpa Sears recipe.
yeah, and I love bread. As someone who loves to still cook bread, I haven't eaten bread, and I not that I'm afraid to eat bread because I try to give myself grace, as we should say. But for me, I'm just such on a great personal weight loss journey that it's a lifestyle now. And I want to say, hey, I successfully reversed or put my type 2 diabetes in remission, which I'm feel like I'm getting very close to. I'm not there yet. So, yes, I'm still a type 2 diabetic. Will I always be? I don't know. My doctor even said that maybe he didn't think that I needed to, if I keep going with the progress, that I might not have to wear my sensor anymore, which scares me, by the way. I don't know why it scares me because I like to know what my sugar levels are.
Well, well, there's not saying that you can't keep wearing it.
Right.
Even if you go, you go get beyond that point and everything else. Um, Bread kills diabetics. And you look at, especially in America, how much everything has got flour in it and got all these things. And going back to the point to eating bread or eating, uh, like when we went to Italy, I ate pizza and it didn't raise my blood sugars at all. If I eat a pizza here in America, it just raises my blood sugar unbelievable amount, and it's a slow climb and everything else. But I don't know, Cam. You think we ought to maybe cut this short? I think we continue on next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Well, one thing I was going to say before we go is I find myself looking more at nutritions on the back of things and see how many ingredients are in items. If it's got,
Look at the carbs.
I look at the carbs, but I also look at all the ingredients as well. If it's got
Yeah.
a chock full of ingredients, it's probably not the best for you.
Yeah. Go to that.
But yeah.
Go to that Yuka app.
Yes,
But
I need to
I'd love
download that.
I'd love to get. I'd love to get some, feedback from, people and stuff like that. I know we're just starting out, but please follow us, everybody. And I think you'll learn a little bit from us that all the stuff we're going through, and I know people are going through trials and tribulations, especially if they have diabetes type 1 or type 2, or else if they've got family members and stuff like that. It's we'd love to hear from you, and we hope you subscribe or follow us, and we'll be trying to do this kind of stuff. But a lot of people, and I really appreciate Cam wanting to have this, but there's so much more in these numbers that I think that we can really dig deep into and kind of philosophize. What's that White Goodman thing? I'm watching you, watching me, watching that, but I'm a philosopher,
Right.
and so stuff like that. And it's I was telling Cam, there's a great song is like and I'll end on this. I'm not as good as what I once was, but I'm as good as I ever will be. And I think I'm better today than I was back when I'm starting out. And here I've had it for going on almost 60 years. Cam's just starting out, so and he's getting better. And but he's only going to continue to keep getting better than what he used to be.
Yeah, as these podcasts keep going, you'll start to see my face more dwindle away. Which is what's great. I love it. So email our show. We'd love to get some questions from you, any feedback. If there's something you want us to talk about, diabetesrway@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, YouTube. We'll try to be getting this on Spotify and iTunes as well, so you can listen to on the go. But yeah, just really appreciate the following and appreciate you sticking with us and listening to what we have to say. There's so much stuff out there.
There's a lot of stuff. Some good, some bad.
Before we go, we need to do a blood sugar test.
I'm 73.
I'm at 83 right now.
Yeah. So So I'm 73 and even.
And
so
you can see how I've gone, but I've maintained to be in the green, right?
Yeah,
you're
good. Yeah, I had a little bit of spike earlier, and I took some insulin, and so now I'm gonna eat actually a taco salad from a very good natural Mexican restaurant here that we got.
Nice. I'm gonna have my lean beef with rice and tomatoes. So.
And we'll watch the Pacers tonight.
That's right. Let's go Pacers.
That's right. All right, Cam. Love you.
All right. Love you too. All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.